Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabalais. Andrew and Nick are on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast, where we are honest about the fact that this is a purely amateur production, no professionalism whatsoever, usually about a millimeter away from turning into a shit show or a complete ranting rave, and very, very often fueled by coffee, whiskey, bad decisions, and anger.
Yes.
Did I cover all the bases, Nick?
I do believe you did, except for the electrons. We are somewhat helped by the electrons.
Okay, the electrons do help facilitate the insanity across the country because Nick and I are not co-located. But Nick, the disappointer of Phil, is on the other side of the mic. Andrew's not. Andrew is taking acting classes for a gig portraying a lawyer, so he's going to be practicing by giving us legal advice in Minecraft that you absolutely should not adhere to. Well, you should adhere to it, but it's not official legal advice because he's not a lawyer. He's only portraying one.
Yep.
And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm pretty sure Nick's not a lawyer.
Oh, God, no. No, I would not do well in the courtroom.
So for the purpose of this show, if I tell you you should do something A, B, C, X, Y, Z, federal firearms licenses and forms and all that, that's not legal advice, but it's probably a really good idea. So if you have any questions about whether or not you're about to do 10 years in Club Fed, you should probably consult a lawyer, not Andrew and not me and not Nick.
God, no.
God, no. Anyway, so let's cruise through the banners real quick, and then let's get to the little bitty topic, and then we'll get to the big one that I'll just give you all the warning now. If you're watching this on YouTube and the stream suddenly goes dark,
it might.
You should probably cruise over to Rumble and pick us up there, because I don't think they'll kill it there. But I've developed trust issues with YouTube recently.
For good reasons.
Yes. Dumbass text Reddick. I'm telling the feds, a fed said it was okay to do it.
Yeah, because that'll get you out of prison.
Yeah. I
didn't work for the Manson family.
It hasn't worked for anybody that has used that excuse. Have you heard about what the feds did to the Weavers?
Yeah, that's fair.
And that was after they were entrapped. Anyway, that's a different topic, different show. So patrons, like some of the patrons that are in the chat right now, misbehaving. Well, I would say misbehaving badly, but it might be doing a good job at misbehaving. I don't know. Not sure. I haven't had enough coffee. Been kind of a crazy day around here. But they're definitely in the chat misbehaving right now. But our patrons are the ones who support the show, keep it on the rails, keep the wheels on the bus, whatever analogy you like.
To keep the bills paid.
They keep the bills paid. They do that. And as long as they keep the bills paid, then we can keep doing this without me having to write a check out of my checking account, which keep the wife happy and keep me in business. Merch, if you'd like to support the show and support a small business, those links are in the show description. Cypress Survivalist is still a thing, and that link is also in the show description. And our Lunch and Learn is coming up June 14th, so today is the 5th, so it's like a week from 2 days from now or something like that. But we have a couple people that are registered to attend. It's going to be really informal. It's going to be literally like come hang out, have a burger, a BS, and I'll give a class on kind of like my method of developing a food stock and how to integrate your preparedness pantry into your regular pantry, because they really should kind of like backfeed each other. You know, I think it's kind of smooth grain activity for a person to say, like, I have prepper food and then I have real food that I eat every day, and the two aren't somehow connected to each other.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem. I mean, we all have some, what I'm going to call prepper food. We do. Like, I'm not eating Mountain House every day, but I do keep some Mountain House around.
But by the same token,
we all keep those, what are those SOS ration bars.
Oh, the mainstay rations?
Yeah, the mainstay ration bars. A lot of us keep one of those in the truck. We don't eat that every day, but the vast majority of your food backstop should be things you would be willing to eat on any daily basis. So it doesn't just go bad in your pantry.
And, you know, my point of view, like we've talked about my food pantry, like I've got some stuff that is not normal consumption. Like the mountain house gets eaten on camping trips.
Right.
Nobody in the house will eat the MREs, which I don't blame them. We're saving those for the in-laws. But you know, the overall majority of our food, it's stuff that we would normally eat under normal circumstances, and we have a lot more of it put away than the average person. So we're constantly rotating through, and it's all about, I want my pantry to last instead of like a couple of weeks, like some people's will. I want it to last several months.
Absolutely.
But anyway, okay, admin work done. Mini tiny topic. I was talking to our resident commo nerds from the Comm Syndicate, and Partisan Comms Group has now officially designated me a comms nerd. Apparently, I get a
Agreed.
decoder ring, and I get to learn the secret handshake. There might be an initiation ceremony. I don't know if it's going to involve like hoods and paddling or anything. Like, you know,
I
Animal
believe
House.
it comes with compulsory debt.
Well, I already have all that. So,
good.
You know, so I've talked a couple of times about, like, you know, software defined radio and all that nerdy BS that most people don't really care about. I don't blame y'all. But I bet the YouTube stream went down.
Did it?
I don't know. All of a sudden, we've got a couple people on Facebook and nobody on YouTube. So if somebody's out there in listener land, let me know if our YouTube stream got cut down. And we haven't even started talking about anything fun yet.
Oh, yeah. YouTube feed got cut again. That's fine. Send it over to Rumble, boys.
That is annoying.
It's okay. They just hate us.
Yeah, that's fine. But anyway, so I did end up buying a hobby grade satellite dish. It's really nothing like outstanding. It's honestly, it looks like it was made in a shed, but it has proven sufficient so far with a little bit of software and with a low noise amplifier and a couple other little tricks to actually interface with the Goes East satellite. Sorry, I'm getting text from my wife while she's out. But anyway, so the last time I was playing around with satellites, I was downloading satellite images from some of the low Earth orbit satellites, NOAA 19 at the time. Mm-hmm. And I made the comment that was kind of a low resolution picture. It was using a very, very antiquated, like a 1970s era. Yes, I see y'all in the chat. YouTube went down. I'm not shocked. I don't know what to tell y'all about YouTube. I mean,
it seems fun.
Like, I mean, I'll file a grievance, but I doubt they're going to do anything about it.
We didn't even talk about waterboarding yet.
Well, I mean, we have things in the show description about the Hearing Protection Act, so...
yes.
Oh, well.
The scary congressional hearings.
But the funny part of it is that there's tons and tons of content on YouTube about silencers, so... I don't know.
We're a small enough channel they can get away with it.
Pretty much.
That's all it is.
Anyway, back to the mini topic. So what I did this time was I got a little satellite dish. I got a little bit of a different piece of software. I was able to download from Goes East, which is formerly Goes 19, which is a geostationary satellite that's, I think, if memory serves me, like 3 times further away from the Earth than the low Earth orbit from NOAA 19 was.
Nice.
And that is a much more modern satellite. It uses a much, much more modern package of instruments. And it also spits out an absolute metric ton more data because it is using L-band, which is like 1.694 megahertz, 1.694 gigahertz. And what I was able to do, this is just an image of
hopefully wash your laptop screen. Dear God.
Well... Fine.
Buddy.
Okay. Can we focus?
No.
Can we focus?
I can. Not with the screen that dirty.
Well, crybaby. Anyway, so this was the end result. I actually managed to snatch almost a gigabyte of data over the course of 2 hours. Wow. Got a lot of different... I forget the technical term for this, but these total Earth shots from the vantage point of that satellite in the visible spectrum and different other spectrums. I don't think I actually put that image in the slideshow. I sent you one where I zoomed way in on this on the
Oh yeah,
Louisiana coastline.
yeah.
Yeah, so when you zoom in like 640% on these, you can actually make out like individual states and geographical features, and it doesn't start getting blurry until you go a little further than that. So
Wow.
I was very impressed. But you also get things like this, which these are not satellite images, obviously, but this is different meteorological and radar data overlaid on maps, and this is all coming straight out of
Nice.
that satellite.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Now
So
the part of
really,
this,
if your comms is almost entirely down, you can get a full weather report download straight from just that satellite.
well, and I also, so I'm again, I didn't want to talk about this too much because I'm still working at it. I've got a
Right.
piece of software that kind of helps to parse through all this mountain of data to make it easier to digest, and that will probably be demonstrated on a future show. What I did do was I managed to, through a lot of hunting, one of the things that comes out of this HRIT data stream is you get a mountain of text files. And those text files, I've come to find out, are the local weather conditions from every radar site NOAA is affiliated with in the United States.
Damn.
So I was able to find it through just basically searching through this directory full of text files. I was able to search for where I know my nearest radar site is, which is actually Slidell, the next town over from where I live. It's where I grew up. And I know exactly where that site is. It's right by the local airport. But I was able to find the local weather conditions for that Slidell site in real time as they were being downloaded. So
that's excellent.
Yeah. So to me, the cool part of this is that, I made the comment with the last time I did this that the low Earth orbit satellites, the APT data that I was getting out of those, it was kind of like a little slice. Like you get a visible shot, a little bit of IR, a couple of different things. You're getting some still images out of it, and that's about it. You're not getting this sheer just tsunami of data coming out of it, which is almost like drinking from a fire hose without this additional program to kind of be able to parse through and organize it. But I mean, I figured this out, so it's not that daggum difficult. But this was in terms of technique, in terms of like the software setup, because I mean the configuration files have to be modified in a text editor to get this thing to fire up. There's more involved in doing this than what I did before. And the equipment involves this dish that's sitting behind me that is, let's see,
somewhat in view.
Yeah, somewhat in view. So anyway, this dish is like 3 feet wide, 2 feet tall. It's got a dong hanging off the front of it that's 1.5 feet long. I mean, it is not a portable thing. It is not like the APT data I was able to get, where that just took like an SDR and a pair of rabbit ear antennas, like something you could pack up in a little bag, and you could genuinely pull that data down over a 10 or 15-minute satellite pass in the middle of nowhere. That to me,
makes sense.
You can make the argument as off-grid comms. This thing and all the stuff I've been doing today, it's more information. It's not it's not portable. This is the kind of thing you're going to set up at your home, or you're going to set up at like, a cabin or something, and you're going to run it from that vantage, and you are not going to be spelunking around and be like, I want to see what the weather is doing, because it's just, we're outside the realm of portability at this point.
Yeah, even if you did have a way to break the dish down like into 2 halves and pack it, it's still going to take up a massive amount of space.
Yeah, I mean, but part of the reason I did this was, part of the reason I did this was to see how far down the SDR rabbit hole it made sense for the average person. And what I've determined from doing all these different activities is that, your basic SDR program, snooping on local radio frequency traffic, that's easy. That's cheap and easy. Looking for local ADS-B transponder signals for aircraft, that's cheap and easy. That's a very lightweight lift. Trunked SDR systems is a little bit more complicated. You need a second SDR. You need another antenna. The software is a little less intuitive, is a little more involved, but still pretty light lift, doable. The low Earth orbit NOAA satellites, APT transmissions, a little bit more complicated, but still not like there's more pieces and there's more involved, but it's not difficult. This is the point at which things start to get tricky. Like it's doable, and there's how-tos on YouTube University. There's a lot of guys that are smarter than I am that made this look really easy. I didn't invent any of this. I followed in their footsteps and did a ton of reading and digging through different software packages to find the ones that made the most sense to me. But this is the step at which this is more input than your average person is going to want to put forth to get some weather or some satellite weather images. Where I stopped last time, most people ought to be able to figure that out. The hardest part of that isn't even like the hardware or the software. It's just timing, because you have like in a 24-hour period, you've got 2, maybe 3 10-minute windows where you can grab a satellite signal, and you basically just set up your equipment, turn the recorder on, and wait for the satellite to run over the top of you. The satellite's in the same place every time. It's not going anywhere. But you have to align the dish. The dish itself had, like you and I were talking about before, the dish itself has to be constructed correctly. Everything has to be aligned in alignment on the dish itself. Everything has to be tuned correctly. There's so many little opportunities for something to not work right. And even I was shocked when I got data out of this, because when I first started playing with this dish, I just wasn't seeing what I was seeing with the APT signal, where it was like a very obvious in your face, we have data. Right. I was just seeing like a little bit of snow in the background, and I was genuinely concerned, like the dish is messed up, or I've got a broken coax, or something's not right.
Well, there's a lot of points of failure there that are possible.
Yeah. But oddly enough, I went ahead and just, kind of went for broke, because if to play with this last piece of software, I had to have some kind of data, even if it was bad data.
Oh, sure. That makes sense. You got to give it something to work with.
So I literally,
it's not like you can listen to the abstract.
Yeah. So you can't divide by zero, so to say.
Right.
Exactly. So I literally fired up set dump. I plugged everything in the way I thought it needed to be, cranked the gain to 11, and then hit the button, and lo and behold, it locked in on the signal.
Nice.
And then it started spitting out packets. And
That's fantastic.
I literally like sat there and looked at it for a minute, and I'm like, I did not expect this to work. So at that point, I turned on the box fan in the garage and the air conditioning because it was 90 degrees outside. And it was kind of like in for a penny, in for a pound. So I smoked a cigar on the workbench and let it eat. And
yeah, you might as well. You've got it all locked in and ready to go. You might as well see what data you're getting.
Yeah. So like I said, there's a part of me that thinks, oh, there's got to be a way to get this, clean the signal up and make the signal look a little bit better. But to be perfectly freaking honest, I mean,
the results speak for themselves.
Yeah. The result kind of does speak for itself. Like if I zoom in and I look really hard, I can find some artifacts and some spots where data got missed. But honestly, the ugliest image I have out of this first batch is from the very first image, because I think when I turned on the recorder, I was halfway through a transmission. So there's some bands and everything that didn't come through, or they're miscolored, or they're misaligned.
Yeah, but you were missing data. Yeah.
But once I got through a full series and I got back to the start, every one of those images, until I shut it down, they look like this. They're nice. I don't want to say flawless, but they're amazingly good.
For a garage setup made out of, let's be very clear here, not premium components, because premium satellite dishes are phenomenally expensive. That's pretty great results.
Yeah, I mean, this was my setup. So you're talking about a $100 satellite dish from New Elec off of Amazon, a $20 tripod from Walmart, because that was sturdier than the God only knows how cheap tripod I had lying around. $40 for a Sawbird, for a New Elec Sawbird that is the low noise amplifier. and they're $35 for the RTL SDR, and then just software that is all pretty much freely available on the internet if you know where to go look for it, because some nerd thought it'd be cool and impressed his nerdy little friends by writing it and publishing it. And I am nerdy enough to say, hey, thanks. That's really cool. I'm going to share that with the internet.
Very cool.
So we're not talking about a ton of money to get this result.
No, not really.
It's just, it's a lot of effort. It's more effort, honestly, than like the average person is willing to put forth. But I kind of make the comparison to when I got really heavy into communications and radio, and I culminated in like building a man-pack radio system that had repeater capabilities in it. It's more than anyone in the right mind needs. It is more than most people want to put together. It's a lot of work to assemble,
really
and to
cool.
It is really cool, but this is one of those things where I think it's like really important for, I think it's really important for somebody to take it upon themselves to push the topic to kind of like to the reasonable limit and a little beyond, to show people what's out there and what's possible. And then let the audience decide, Phil, I have absolutely no need to do that. I just need 2 radios so I can talk to my wife from a mile and a half away.
Yeah.
2 thumbs up. I totally get it. My wife is never going to play with half the nerdy nonsense I've built. But, you know, I had to do it to see if it was possible.
Absolutely.
At my tech level, on a reasonable budget. And it turns out it is.
Yeah, very possible.
But that will be a topic for a future episode, because
that'd probably be a good one to have a couple of the guys from the Comm Syndicate talk to you about, because they would probably be able to. They would probably tease out some of those little background questions that you wouldn't necessarily remember, and I have no clue to think of.
Yeah, I actually shared this with them, and I immediately had one person ask me for a link to further resources. Like, that's cool. I want to try that. So
nice.
This is why it's important to have peers that know more than you do in certain subjects, because none of us can know everything about everything, or even everything about anything.
Yes.
Cruising through the chat, catch up. Yes, my wife is diming me out. I'm a gigantic nerd. She knew this about me when we got married. Nothing has changed. Nothing's changed. Joe, I have no idea what you were talking about. I'm just waiting for Nick to make TTRP comments or Phil to rant because some government agencies did shady stuff. I mean, this isn't really that episode, Joe, but
maybe next week.
Maybe next week. And Jeff. Jeff says
maybe can.
Okay, so for Jeff specifically, and for the audience, if you're curious about satellite-based projects and SDR projects, there's several YouTube channels out there, but the one that I've really gravitated towards is called Save It for Parts. It's all one word, no spaces. The dude is us. He's I mean, in the sweetest, nicest, no homo bro, way possible. He's a gigantic nerd.
Fantastic.
He like free cycles and upcycles and repurposes junk. He buys satellite dishes off the side of the road, and then my wife is calling me out because I didn't just read the comment. Thank you, babe. Jeff said I'm going to have to look into whether or not I can mod my parents' old DTV dish into a directional antenna. So like I was saying, the YouTube channel, Save It for Parts, right here on, well, I'd say right here on YouTube, but we're not on YouTube at the moment, but on YouTube, the dude does a lot of projects where he is repurposing old, mostly TV satellite dishes and Wi-Fi dishes for use in messing around with like the NOAA satellites and the GO satellites and Meteor and Metop and all those. He does a lot of he does a lot of different content, but it kind of all centers around this idea that like he likes to take junk and turn it into nerd stuff. He also has a whole series where he's like resurrecting and messing around with ancient friggin' desktops like the old Commodores and the Tandys and all those. I have even learned about some that I had heard of, but I'd never actually seen in person because they were too daggum expensive when I was young. So it's a cool channel, but he does a lot of stuff about this. Quite a few of his videos actually got me, started down this road. Once I got into SDR, I started looking around, and that's when I stumbled into his channel, and that's when I started learning about the satellite stuff, which has been instructional. Anyway, 25 minutes, one topic down, admin stuff done. Let's talk about the Hearing Protection Act. Probably the reason why we got nuked off of YouTube, because God forbid I have a discussion about why the ATF can brag about their people having brand new suppressors, but any mention about civilians having silencers is somehow taboo. I'm not sure why.
No, Phil, no, it makes sense. Think about this. It makes it easier, according to the ATF, for people to commit murders and get away with it. The ATF loves committing murders and getting away with it.
Yeah. Not making your case.
Dogs,
Nick.
children, pregnant women. Hey, the ATF loves to get away with murder.
Somebody out there is somebody who has their feelings hurt right now, and all I can say is if you have big feelings about the ATF being accused of murdering innocent women and children and pets, you should open a freaking book, or
You
just
really should.
You should internet for an afternoon, and then you can come back to the adult table and have a conversation about why we were right and you were wrong.
So, Hearing Protection Act, basically what that comes down to, everybody, is taking suppressors off the NFA, deregulating suppressors a little bit, treating them like firearms, which they really shouldn't be. They should be treated as a firearms accessory. I should be able to buy them in the same places I buy PMags and buttstocks.
I get confused about this, though. Are silencers a firearm, or are they not? Because it seems like the government changes their mind from one week to the next.
Only when it's convenient are they or aren't they.
Thank you, Nick. I knew there was a. I knew there was a.
That's the way it works.
I knew there was a little criteria I was missing. It's whether it's convenient for their current argument, which is always aimed at making sure that there's rules for thee and rules for me, thee and not for me. Thank you. I knew I was missing something.
Yeah, I mean, look. What's the big deal about suppressors?
I mean,
they just make your gun a little bit quieter.
Well,
they make the recoil impulse a little bit different, which can be helpful. They're really nice in home defense scenarios where you don't want to have to don a full set of ear pro for everybody in the house as you're taking care of business. And they're better for night vision, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, because they decrease the muzzle flash quite a bit.
I have it on good authority they do, unless you flick the silly switch to full auto and then your can glows bright green under IR.
Interesting.
Just think
that would make sense because they get hot. That would explain the can covers on all the guys' setups with nods.
Infrared is a thing, but let me ask you a question there, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
You've been working as a machinist for thereabouts how long now?
Shit, since I was 13.
So
30,
a very, very, 20, very long time.
23 years? 22
How's your
years?
hearing?
Oh man, it's not great. It's not great, boss. Between the machine shops, the heavy metal concerts, my hobbies, and homemade improvised fireworks in Wisconsin, hearing's not great. Hearing is not great.
And according to the DoD, I came back from Iraq with 60% hearing loss in 1 year and 40 in the other. Not service related.
Nothing to do with the Blackhawks.
No. I don't think it was the Blackhawks necessarily. I think it was the fact that our housing area was at the foot of the runway, and the F-16s from the Air Force love to go right over the top of our hangar, full afterburner every morning.
Yeah.
So
probably necessary, but also loud. Turns out.
Yes. So. And that's before we even talk about my misspent youth around like very loud cars without mufflers on them, and
the audio tuning.
Yes, car audio when you're hanging around a bunch of cars that can punch out like 155 decibels. That's not really a recipe for longevity of your eardrums.
My wife's throwing me under the bus here. What? Huh? Are my common answers. That is correct. I'm getting better with the ear pro.
Okay, but your wife at least acknowledges that it's hearing damage related.
Oh, a good portion of it is.
Yeah. Well, my wife literally thought I was just ignoring her until one day she literally started having a conversation with me designed to provoke a response, and it didn't even hear a word she said. And then she looked at me and said, "Oh my God, you really can't hear, can you?" And I said, "What?"
Yeah, that is accurate. I mean, look. PPE, Ear Pro, fantastic. Please do use it, especially if you're younger. You will regret not having used it by the time you're 30.
Yes.
You're gonna notice.
I'm going to tell you that when you're 20 years old and you think that, Ear Pro and Eye Pro are for nerds, that's fine. But when you're a one-eyed deaf guy and before you're 35, you can come back to the adult table and you can tell me how you were wrong and I was right.
Yeah.
But from the 42-year-old guy who can't hear squat anymore, just, guard what little hearing you have left.
Absolutely.
Jeff Yagosinski, what is this hearing you speak of? That's the thing normal people can do when people talk
That
and they
ringing
can.
when it's quiet.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the whole draw with silencers to me, and like the wacky part of this has always been that literally the rest of the freaking war, like Europe, where you can't have fun. Fun is illegal, as a matter of fact.
Largely, yes.
But
Blasphemy,
you can buy
also illegal. One of my
But
favorite
you can buy a silencer over the counter at a hardware store. And as a matter of fact,
it's illegal to hunt without them in certain countries.
It is. And it's considered rude, even if it's not illegal. How about that?
It is rude. I mean, look, let's be honest. When are you most likely to see a deer? Dawn and dusk. People are probably in bed, especially on a Saturday morning at dawn. God, I hope you are. And you're not like me.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of my point of view is that there's lots of good reasons to have silencers. There's not a lot of good reasons to, criminalize them and regulate them nearly out of existence. And the only thing I keep hearing from opponents is they make guns quieter. Like that's a problem.
Well, to be fair, one of the big reasons behind making them illegal back in the day was to control poaching. And a lot of poachers were using suppressors. Okay.
Nick.
A lot of poachers also use bows. Phil, have you shot a bow?
Yes.
Have you shot a suppressed rifle?
Yes.
Which is quieter?
The bow.
Always.
But let me ask you a question there, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're telling me is that we made silencers, I wouldn't say illegal. This part
of the reason they were regulated was so that only rich people would have them, and rich people are less likely to be poachers.
Yes. I mean, a $200 tax stamp on like a $5 silencer back in 1934 was, for all intents and purposes, making them illegal. Mm-hmm. But I'm a little confused. Poaching is illegal, isn't it?
I do believe, yes.
So if a person is going to poach,
do the crime, yes.
Then why wouldn't they just do extra crime to get away with the first crime?
Well, traditionally, according to my uncles when I was growing up, you are to only commit one felony at a time because you're far more likely to get away with it.
Okay.
Like if you're going to speed, don't speed while you're, say, drinking, or while the passenger is driving and the driver's hanging out the side of the car window.
Okay, not your the case for banning suppressors has not been made. I'm calling all of this government shenanigans.
Agreed.
And especially the fact that, I mean, anyway, you know how I feel about preemptive policing. It's a stupid idea, and it always is, and it never works well. And every time the government declares war on something, it usually doesn't accomplish much. Like,
except the Japanese.
They declared the war on drugs, and then, drugs didn't go away, and they declared the war on poverty, and poverty got worse. That's fair.
We still do have the Japanese.
And they, the only thing that worries me is if they declare a war on government corruption, that's going to freaking go to 11.
Yeah, probably. So, well, so let's say all goes well. Hearing Protection Act goes into effect. Suppressor market booms because it's going to.
So my extraordinarily overpriced and underappreciated business degree tells me that you and I were talking about this right before the show started. What we are in the midst of right now is an extreme market disruption.
Yes.
So the suppressor market is being artificially contorted.
The supply is being artificially suppressed.
I don't think it's not just the supplies being suppressed.
The
The
demand
supply,
alone.
the demand is being suppressed, and that in turn is precluding supply from increasing because the supply is never going to appreciably increase until demand appreciably increases. And demand has been increasing over the last 20 years
Oh, absolutely has.
as that $200 tax stamp, $200 has become less and less and less money. And especially now the NFA wait times for certain types of transfers has come down appreciably. The market is accelerating, but it's still accelerating against the brakes. And the
It
brakes
is.
are, as long as there's an NFA process, as long as there's a tax stamp involved, and you and I were talking about this. Right now, it's not just that you have to pay a $200 tax stamp for your silencer, but the company that produces it has to pay a tax stamp for Form 1. So before the silencer even gets built, there's already $200 of markup in that SB because you can rest assured they're
ballpark
passing
what
that.
it should probably cost anyway. No, like
Yeah.
the suppressor raw stock to finished product should cost less than $200.
Yeah,
now that wouldn't be retail price. That would be the producer's input.
Yeah, but let's say you got $200 plus another $200 from the Form 1 for the tax stamp, and then you've got extra money tied up in the distribution that all has to be very tightly controlled, and then you got more retail markup tied up in the fact that somebody's got to keep this thing on their books and in their showcase and controlled while the NFA process goes through. And then until recently, silencers weren't trading hands really fast. So you might have to sit on the thing for a year and a half. So,
months at minimum.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where it's like, the market has always been kind of hitting the market has always been kind of Tanya Harding in the friggin' kneecap.
Yeah.
By the NFA. And if the NFA were to go away tomorrow, or if silencers were to come off of the NFA, my prediction is that the silencer market goes to the moon overnight. You will not be able to buy a suppressor anywhere in this country
for any price.
For any price. And then after that, it will be for no sane price, because when these things can trade hands just like a pack of chewing gum, they are like the price is just going to explode.
Right, because the demand is going to increase far faster than the supply can. So one of the big things we wanted to talk about here is what we can do as a stopgap measure. What can we make with our home shops and our home skills that will do the job in the interim?
Yeah. And before we go any further down this road, my buddy, the actor, is practicing his lines, and he is telling me that you should absolutely not act on any of this information you find it on the show unless you have filed the appropriate forms and asked for your governing body for the appropriate permission to do so without going to federal prison. And if you fail to do that, it is on you, not on us. Have a good day.
Yeah, definitely don't do that. File a Form 1. Technically, nothing that we're going to tell you here is illegal to do, assuming you get your tax stamp, which is some bullshit.
Yes, and it's also worth pointing out, in case somebody who's a YouTube lawyer would like to contact me afterwards, there is absolutely nothing we're going to discuss here that is not all over the son of a bitch internet already.
True.
I know. I looked. As a matter of fact, there's about 3 dozen videos on YouTube about how silencers works. I don't know why mine's been taken down, but whatever.
Well. So essentially, what a suppressor is a device that expands the area, it slows down the expansion of gas as it comes out of your firearm, okay, through the use of multiple chambers. Slows that gas down and cools it down so that there is less of the pop from the gas coming out of the muzzle of your gun, right? Very simple, Phil. So what you really need is you need a hollow tube that can be attached to your muzzle that can resist pressure. And then you need a series of baffles staged throughout that, and a hole between those baffles that fits or is a close fit with whatever caliber you're shooting. Pretty simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not a whole lot to it. All right. You titled this section Bubba Engineering. Here are some things that you can make suppressors out of that I don't recommend. Technically, it works. You bring up every once in a while the fuel filter or the oil filter suppressors.
Yes.
You thread an adapter onto the end of your gun. You thread the fuel filter onto the adapter. Okay. Nice and easy, quick, right? Don't even have to do any drilling. Don't have to punch any holes in it. The bullet will take care of the first hole.
You just have to file Form 1 and then put a serial number on the side of the oil filter. But yeah,
correct. Continue. In theory, should the Hearing Protection Act go through, you could make infinite number of oil filter suppressors. Now, these things.
Ooh, I just had a thought. Everybody should probably buy 2 or 3 extra oil filters for their vehicle.
Oh shit! Yeah, that's actually not a bad point because dumb fucks are going to be doing this all over the goddamn place, and they're going to be going through a lot of oil filters.
I don't think you're going to be able to find a friggin' extra tall oil filter for a Ford 5-liter anywhere.
No,
like
you're not.
The great big meaty ones, those are going to disappear.
Tractor filters too, because those things are already about that damn long. So anyway, if you've ever looked inside of an oil filter, or if you haven't, you'll know that it is a series of paper baffles in that oil filter. Hot gas coming out of the end of a barrel of a gun, not great for paper. So what's going to happen very quickly is that paper is going to get shredded, and you're going to lose the baffling effect of the oil filter very quickly. You're going to get, from what I've heard, somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 24 shots of somewhat suppressed, but not very well suppressed. So, most of a mag, unless it's a big high caliber rifle, like a 300 Win Mag or something, that might just explode it. Another thing you can do is the old school 2-liter bottle over the end of a 22. Works for, again, 12, maybe 10 shots, somewhere around there. Another one that's I've seen before people do is the tennis ball tubes.
Yeah,
it comes with like four tennis balls. So what you do is you drill a hole in the one end of the tennis ball tube, stick that over the barrel, cut all your tennis balls in half, and stack them cup side towards the gun on the first few, and then other way out toward the muzzle, and then you tape over the front end. That gets you a little bit more. Still doesn't last very long. Don't have to poke any holes in it. Doesn't really require any power tools. But again, you're going to be limited to caliber. You're going to want to be in the smaller, either pistol caliber range or like 22s, stuff like that. Now, if you step up into like, I'm going to call it some power tools required, you can get into like the new 3D printed suppressors people are putting out there, which some of them are having success with 5.56 and 2.23. I haven't seen any 30 cal cans successful yet, but a lot of 9mm, a lot of 45. I don't know about like 10 mil. I haven't seen, but definitely 22 LR. People are using carbon fiber copolymers and stuff like that in their 3D printers to print both the baffles and the shell. A lot of people have gone to printing the baffles out of whatever 3D printed material they have, and then using a carbon fiber tube over the top of it for some of the lighter calibers. If you guys want those files, technically they're not illegal to own. They are illegal to make without filing a Form 1. You can get them from a variety of places on the internet. Just Google suppressor STL file, hit enter, and they will pop up. It is not difficult to find them. They are, I assume, not difficult to print. They look fairly simple. Then we've got the old standby solvent traps. They're pre-threaded to fit some of the common muzzle thread sizes. They are not a suppressor until you drill a hole in the last end cap. But once you do, it is then legally considered a suppressor. So they've got a complex, usually aluminum. Sometimes you can get them out of titanium, baffle system in them. A lot of guys use them for their Form 1s because they're actually surprisingly good for what they are. You can get those things for, I think the last time I saw solvent traps on Alibaba or somewhere like that, they're like $25 to $50, depending on what you got them made out of. But again, not technically a suppressor until you drill a hole through it. Now, this is where you can maybe get into a little bit of legal trouble if you buy this stuff before you file your Form 1.
Constructive intent.
Yeah. The ATF has tried to claim that just because you have one of these solvent traps and a drill press and the right size drill, that you were intending to make a suppressor. And I would say that filing a Form 1 is also constructive intent because you've shown the intent to create the suppressor by filing the Form 1.
I'd also like to point out at this moment that Cody Wilson had spent a not inconsequential amount of time or money trying to keep his ass at federal prison because he pissed off the department. He pissed off the U.S. federal government by publishing 3D printer files on how to make a firearm.
And they thank God he did, because now we have got a ruling in our favor that none of those files are considered a violation of the law.
Yes, but the reason I bring up Cody Wilson is just as kind of a warning to everybody out there that there is a difference between I haven't broken the law and I have convinced the powers that be I haven't broken the law. And if you find yourself in the gray area between the two, you could find yourself spending way more time and way more money than you prefer to try to keep your butt out of prison. And I agree. I am always very proud of the people who like stand on business and put their butt on the line and do what's right to try to get a ruling in favor of, freedom and freedom in the people. But that's a hard row to hoe when you're the person having to do the hoeing.
Absolutely is. Don't, I guess all I'm going to say about that is don't play that game if you're not willing to suffer the potential consequences.
Yeah. Or just keep your freaking mouth shut about it.
You could also do that.
You could also file a Form 1, which
you could also file a Form 1.
Andrew's telling me again, I have to remind, it's something like every 15 minutes, I have to remind the audience, like, you should do government paperwork and pay money to keep out of prison.
I mean, Al Capone went to prison because he didn't pay the tax man. If you're going to do crime, at least pay your taxes. Because the ATF will find you. Or not the ATF, the IRS will find you.
Oddly enough, if you grease government palms, you tend to stay out of jail. Oh, and just in case anybody's curious, I don't know if y'all...
Fully white community guidelines removal, spicy mufflers. There you go.
Yes.
What community guidelines do we violate, Phil?
Firearms content again.
Oh, no.
Yeah, content that shows someone live streaming while holding, handling, or transporting a firearm isn't allowed on YouTube. I guess my hands must be firearms, Nick, or maybe my beard is. Maybe that's the problem. When I do this,
it could be the beard. Is that handling the guns, Phil?
It must be.
It must be.
I don't know. Nick, stop stroking your forearms on the show. That maybe
you can't see my forearms. The camera is too zoomed in.
I don't know what the issue is. I have appealed this. I'm not really expected to go anywhere because last time I appealed
it, nowhere.
Yeah, the last time I appealed this exact same ruling, I literally got told we have ruled and we are not reviewing it.
Great. Well, fuck them.
But that's why you should. That's why you should subscribe to us on YouTube and Facebook and Rumble, because they're not going to take us down in all of them.
Nope, probably not.
I might actually take this video stream and toss it up on Patreon just for the patrons so they could actually, have the opportunity to watch this.
Yeah, why not? So
maybe YouTube thought your satellite was a weapon.
It's possible.
Rachel,
Phil, are you building space lasers?
Based on the average intelligence of the people that I am assuming work for Google and Meta, I don't know. Anyway.
Could go even a little more old school for some power tools suppressor build. A lot of people here be familiar with the term freeze plug.
Mm-hmm.
What it is a stamped sheet metal component that you would put into an engine block to prevent the block from cracking in case it froze.
Pretty sure Stuart mentioned that.
Yeah, Stuart did bring that up to us. He was
one of
the old school standbys.
Well, he was around when Henry Ford installed freeze plugs on the Model T, so he would know.
He would. So essentially what you do with that is you're going to have to find yourself some thin-walled, either welded with the weld cleaned up on the inside or unwelded thin-walled tubing. And you just drill a hole in the freeze plugs, stack them up in the tubing and then weld caps on the end, with one having a hole in it and one having a threaded hole in it. And you end up with a fairly rudimentary but very functional suppressor. Now you could go a little more old school than that and go with like a glass pack muffler sort of situation. A lot of guys would use either a thin-walled hydraulic tube for the outside or a copper pipe for the outside, and then a copper pipe for the inner tube with just a bunch of holes drilled in it all along the length. You put those tubes together with end caps, and you fill the intervening space in between those two tubes with steel wool, copper wool, anything like that that can just slow down that gas expansion throughout. Those are kind of your options for like semi-built. Oh yeah, freeze plugs and a mag light. Yep, that was another one I was going to bring up. The old mag light tubes, the D-cell ones, work pretty good for rifle calibers. The short D-cell ones work pretty good for pistol calibers, from what I've heard. If you can find the freeze plugs that do fit in them, you may have to do some light machining or sanding to get that stuff to fit.
Yep. I knew Stewart would pipe up. Yeah. Glass pack type was the first I built.
Pack in the 80s.
He said in the 80s. I think he meant the 1880s. But,
yep.
You know.
Yep. All right. So
just so everybody knows, I'm not discriminating against the elderly. Stewart is not that old.
No,
he was not born in the He was not born in the 1880s. And I pick on everybody this much. So
that's true.
It is kind of a thing. But yes, prosumer machining. So I'm thinking, like, you know, for those of you out there who aren't Bubba banging stuff together in the garage and are better at JB welding than actual welding, but for those of you who have actual skills and machining tools and should probably move to a state where silencers are not illegal, so you can open a little side business, just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I know. I would like to move out of the state, but that would require an almost 1 hour drive to my current job, and I like my job.
Bro, you could work 20 hours a day making silencers for the next 5 years and not get bored.
I could, absolutely. Yeah, you know, so for the Bubba stuff, you can do a lot of that with a handheld corded or cordless drill. I don't recommend it. Get a cheap Harbor Freight drill press and a vise. It is safer. It is better quality results, and you will save your fingers. Phil, there you go.
Yeah.
So for those of us that have the compulsion to collect work and bring it home in the form of the lathe you guys can sort of see behind me.
Sorry, Rachel.
It's all right. It's fine. It's fine. The steel chips are mostly contained to this small area of the basement.
Should I tell her about the thing I sent you the other day to encourage bad behavior?
Nope. Because my buddy Rich is already trying to get me to buy at least a Bridgeport and one of his CNC machines, but I don't have a garage big enough. So for those of you that have access to machine tools like I do, you can take sort of the next step up and you can build yourself custom sized tubing, custom sized baffles. You can get into more exotic materials and you're going to work on like a drill press. For instance, if you happen to know some people that have machine shops and you can collect bits of Phil, you leave it alone.
I'll let you and your wife have that discussion.
My wife is trying to get Phil to tell her what he tried to get me to buy.
Okay, in the name of full disclosure, Rachel, he's not going to get it because he's already looking at something else.
I'm already looking at the exact same thing, just a couple towns over instead of a couple states over.
Yeah, but in my defense, after he bullied me into buying a shotgun, I owed him one.
He does, yes.
Although if I bullied you into buying like a $10,000 piece of shop equipment, you'd probably bully me into buying a freaking M1 Abrams or something. I mean,
and look, escalation has consequences, Phil.
I was about to say escalation has consequences. Where were we?
So if you have a lathe and you know some guys that do some titanium turning for the aerospace industry, and they have some leftover cutoffs just happen to be laying around, not hurting anybody. You bring a couple dozen donuts in a box to the shop on a Friday morning. You're like, hey, guys, can I dig through the scrap pile? You might be able to get yourself enough titanium to make, say, half a dozen tubes for suppressors in a variety of sizes. Now, that's going to take a lot more time investment and a lot more education for yourself and a lot more tooling costs. You can put together one of those solvent trap suppressors for in the neighborhood of, let's call it $300. Get yourself a set of drill bits, a halfway decent little vise from Harbor Freight, little Harbor Freight drill press, and the solvent trap. And then you pay your $200 and you can make yourself a suppressor. You end up about the same cost as a silencer co-pistol suppressor. But when you make your next suppressor, your $200 tax stamp and your $50 solvent trap kit, or your 100 count bag of 1 1/4 freeze plugs and 10 pieces of pipe. Joe's asking, isn't titanium sparky when used as a suppressor? So titanium will burn, but it has to do with how fine the particulate matter of the titanium is and how much surface area there is to weight of titanium. So titanium's fairly safe, like in an ingot or in a pipe. You can actually even get it really hot. You can use titanium for a lot of things that get very high temperatures. Because the ratio of surface area to the weight of the material is high enough, it can't get to the ignition point. If your suppressor is getting hot enough to ignite titanium in a tubular form with the baffles all formed, you're probably shooting more than is, well, I'm not going to say reasonable because I like shooting a lot too. You're probably shooting more than my budget would allow at once. There are some metals that you really don't want to machine at home. Titanium being one of them because the chips can catch fire sometimes. So if you're going to do that, make sure you have the correct fire suppression equipment, which is why I won't be doing any titanium turning in my basement back here because a metallic titanium fire in my house sounds like a really terrible decision that my wife would probably beat me over.
She would be upset.
She would be very upset. Rightly so. But, odds are wouldn't be a problem. I don't think it would be a problem. I've turned titanium before and I've never had it catch fire, but it was also flooded with coolant. I can't do coolant flood on my 1920s lathe. It just isn't equipped for that. But what I can do is turning a lot of aluminum. And aluminum suppressors, still pretty light. Not as light as titanium, not as strong as titanium. But if you, Stuart, he is talking to other people, important people.
No, I'm actually reviewing the... I was actually reviewing the fact that it took YouTube a grand total of 6 minutes to individually review our stream and confirm that we were displaying firearms outside of a range.
We were displaying firearms. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not display anything. I mean, unless my safe counts as a firearm.
See,
I mean, there's not even any fire in the background right now.
The annoying part of this is when I break the rules and I get caught breaking the rules, I'm not indignant about it. No, that's fair. I got caught.
Yep.
But it really, really sticks in my craw when I intentionally try to be a good boy and play by the rules and still get penalized. That genuinely aggravates me.
Yeah.
So now I just have to wonder how I can be a gigantic pain in YouTube's behind. Anyway, that'd be
we could start flagrantly displaying firearms.
Yeah, the funny thing is we've got like a year and a half of streams where there was freaking an AR-15 in that background and nobody said anything about it back then. So
probably don't.
Yeah, Joe, I don't know what to tell you. Joe just asked, how do gun tubers get away with videos? Damned if I know. Best I can tell,
big enough channels. That is how.
Best I can tell is when you get big enough and when you're slinging around enough ad revenue, when you pitch a fit, YouTube listens. And when you run a small podcast like this, they're more than happy to just smash the button on you for reasons.
Right, because our audience, as devoted as it is, and we do appreciate you guys, they are not going to get 1 million or 100,000 emails angry about why their favorite show is not on the air tonight from you guys, because there's just not that many of you. And okay, fair enough. YouTube is the bigger kid in the yard right now, and they can hit us with the bat when they feel like it. Fair enough.
Yeah, but last time I let Sleeping Dogs lie. This time I might actually just download the video from the stream and just raw post it.
I would.
What can they do? Hit me with
because it's not a live stream.
It's not a live stream. I mean, I guess they could always just play whack-a-mole and take that down too, but
just
I don't know.
Put it up with a 1 at the end and then a 2, and then we'll see how many numbers you got to add to the title before they just let it through.
You know better than to encourage my bad behavior.
Oh, I will absolutely encourage you to be a pain in the ass to the YouTube overlords.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry for getting distracted. I was multitasking with administrative work.
Mm-hmm. So if you want to build a suppressor somewhat close to like a pro grade suppressor or an off-the-shelf suppressor, you probably are going to need a lathe, a mill, potentially an OD or an ID grinder, or a bench grinder that you are comfortable with doing OD grinding. Essentially, what you need is fairly precision fit components. You need to be able to cut and thread external diameters and internal diameters, as well as shape conical baffles. Because conical baffles do a little bit better. It's a fluid dynamics thing that I don't personally really understand. But I realize all the major manufacturers do it that way, somewhat conical baffles. So that's what I would probably aim for. Or you could, if you really wanted to step up, you could go to buying yourself a CNC mill and making one of the new monolithic core suppressors. So you would turn and thread the outside of the core that goes inside your inner tube, and then you would set it up on a 4th axis or a 5-axis mill and mill your baffle cores, your baffle openings inside of that. Like I believe it's like the Mythic series of suppressors were some of the first ones, the monolithic cores that were all hollowed out. Those would be fairly easy to do even on like a manual mill. Because realistically, what it is just a bunch of plunge cuts and a little bit of milling. But it's going to take, I mean, you're going to be talking about, instead of the 20 minutes of effort to drill one hole in the solvent trap, you're probably talking about a few weekends of work to make your own accurate baffles for everything. So, there are options that you guys can go into if this does go through. If you don't have access to a lot of power tools, your best bet is probably going to be, Jeff is saying that monolithic is just a washer weld core. Sometimes they are machined out of a solid billet stock. It depends on who's making it.
And sometimes they're 3D printed, as we're seeing in some of these really, really cutting edge designs.
Yeah, with the helical baffle systems and backfeed baffle systems, some of them, yeah. Look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. 3D printed metal suppressors are not within the realm of any of our budgets. The machines to do it properly and the machines to center it afterwards are you're talking 5-6 figures on the low end for the machine, and you're probably talking about weeks to months of trial and error to get that stuff up and running, unless you have extensive experience with metal 3D printing. I don't. I've got plastic 3D printers, and honestly, with as often as they screw up, I don't know that I would want to trust a metal 3D print that I couldn't X-ray inspect personally to find out if there's voids or missing adhesion somewhere. Especially if I was going to toss it on the end of, say, my 300 Win Mag that I have nicely tuned. I'd rather not be getting baffle strikes and or having a somewhat of a squib where I get a round stuck in the suppressor.
You don't want
I
to play
just don't
Pop
think it's
Goes
there
Silencer.
I just don't think it's ready yet for non-experts. Stewart is correct. If the Hearing Protection Act makes it through the continuing resolution, oops.
Stop it, Nick.
I'm trying to help, damn you. Start building quick because the Dems win the House and Senate and the White House in 2028. They can put it back in and worse via CR. That is probably correct. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, and just to start to round this out, like, I'm going to be real honest. I think the chance of HPA getting through is slim to begin with.
I do too.
And my reasoning for that is, bearing in mind that it is 2025, I'm 42 years old. I've lived through more than a handful of presidential administrations. I've watched the. I keep wanting to use words, but then I don't want to use those words because words have meanings. I've watched what most would consider the body of the GOP alter itself quite radically over the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing a faction within the GOP that genuinely seems to kind of have this whole shrink government, right size the budget, decrease regulation, screw stupid laws, more freedom. They kind of have that vibe in their hearts. Mm-hmm. And I'm encouraged by that, however, that is not the mainstream Republican.
And most of those will never be.
And most of those pompous assholes are not going to vote for something like this, nor are they going to vote for anything that reinforces the Second Amendment, nor are they going to vote for anything that restores gun rights until the people proverbially, because I don't want to have the FBI visit me, but proverbially put a gun to their head and threaten to vote them, primary them out of their freaking seats. That is the only version of reality where any of these jerks get it through their thick freaking skulls that the Second Amendment means what it means, and we want it to mean what it means, and we're putting our foot down. So until that day comes, and that day is not going to come, by the way, until a majority of the populace is willing to stand on business and say, do this or else.
Correct.
And the majority of registered voting Republicans, in my experience, are still terrified at the idea of being able to buy machine guns at vending machines. So the idea of deregulating silencers is just way too far for most of them to go. So
do you know what I think this all is?
Controlled opposition, smoke and mirrors,
no,
bread and circus.
I think the inclusion of the Hearing Protection Act in the continuing resolution is a poison pill thrown in there so that the Republicans can say, oh, we can't get this passed because of yada, yada, yada. But if we get rid of this, will you sign it, Democrats? That's what I think it is.
And there's a much more Machiavellian possibility here. Mm-hmm. And it is that the GOP included this knowing it would be a non-starter, just so they could say, we tried, and gun rights are a losing battle. Mm-hmm. And when this fails, this is their engraved invitation to say we have to ignore the crazy gun people because their issue is not winning elections. It's not winning his favor in the House and the Senate. It is a losing issue. We have to ignore the crazy gun people.
Yeah, we need to go back to actually get us that they won't. They think they're not going to get as much funding next time.
Yeah. Now again,
we solved your issue.
Now understand, as I tell Stewart because Stewart is a wealth of information. He and I have talked this and many other things to death, and I've always finished my opinion off with, I am happy to be proven wrong.
Yep.
Like whenever I pontificate and I say, this is what I think is going to happen, I don't see this going through, I live to be proven wrong. And I have been proven wrong occasionally, and I literally
we got concealed carry in Illinois.
We got concealed carry in Louisiana. We got constitutional carry. we got constitutional carry in Louisiana, and I was shocked by that. I mean, it was a happy shock, but I was still shocked. I was still shocked because
fantastic. I love being wrong on those kinds of things because I'm kind of a pessimist when it comes to government.
Yeah, but honestly, like, I just can't see HPA going through. I really, really can't. If I'm wrong, and in a couple of months we look back on this and think, wow, Phil really had this misjudged, and you can't buy a suppressor for any reasonable amount of money, and people that are sitting on 5 or 6 extra cans are cashing them in for retirement plans.
Fantastic.
I would love to be wrong. I just don't see it, because I've never known government to relinquish power except under duress and while kicking and screaming like a toddler. And I have never known government to willingly surrender any kind of tax. And I have never known the combination of like disarmament hearts and FUDs that permeate our government at all levels to just be reasonable human beings for once and realize that the thing they're fighting over is not that big of a deal. Like, if they put this much freaking effort into making sure that if this much effort was put into tracking down people that actually commit crimes with firearms instead of just policing pre-crime with firearms, we'd probably have a safer country.
Yeah, but people that commit crimes with firearms are dangerous, Phil. Don't you care about the safety of police officers?
As a matter of fact, I do. And I also think that if you put a badge on your chest, then danger comes with territory. Not sorry.
Don't hear a lot of firefighters complaining about getting lit on fire.
I mean, look,
or welders.
We have a very close friend of ours that is in law enforcement. I have a brother-in-law in law enforcement. I know a lot of cops. And I admit their job is dangerous, and I don't want to see any of them put in danger unnecessarily. But if you put the badge on your freaking chest, your job's to go after people that probably want to kill you and want to kill me too. Mm-hmm. Sorry, not sorry. That's part of your job.
Oh, yeah. That's why the pension in the medical is as good as it is. Look, there's a lot of dangerous jobs out there. You don't see me bitching about getting steel chips in my hands at work. Steel chips come with the territory.
You want to join the show,
trying to harm you, come with the territory being a cop.
My wife just poked her head around the corner to say she was home, and I'm like, you want to come on? And she said no.
More than welcome to.
Nah. I think we will go ahead and wrap this up, though. I mean, I think this was fun to talk about. I definitely think that if HPA went by tomorrow, I'd probably be Bubba banging nonsense in my garage, and if it blows up, it blows up. And
I will send you so much raw material.
But here's the reason I want to talk about this, because if theoretically the NFA went away tomorrow, or silencers come off of the NFA registry, then there's literally not much reason not to try to screw around with some homemade silencers. And to your point, if they last 20 or 30 shots, who freaking cares? I know, guys.
The oil filter thing. Please leave my truck oil filters alone. There are better things to make suppressors out of.
But my point is that like we in the gun community burn down like 30, 40 bucks worth of ammo shooting washers and dryers in the woods. I mean, we do dumb we waste money doing dumb stuff because it's just fun.
I have blown up more 1 pound propane tanks than I have probably ever emptied the proper way.
So I guess that's kind of my point, is that I do think that if HPA goes away, if HPA goes through, I do think there's going to be a lot of guys. Silencers will be the Wild West. All the ones that are professionally made will get histrionically expensive in the near term. Mm-hmm. And eventually, like, demand will calm down a little bit. Probably Palmetto State Armory, sponsor this show, will start making silencers. Like, the market will eventually do this. In the near term, it's going to do this. And this is going to stay right here for a while.
You know, the thing of it is, though, is you got to remember, guys, that the cost and time to manufacture these things, the material to manufacture these things, aren't going to get fantastically cheaper. Even if we get, say, a PSA 5.56 can and a PSA 9 mil can, I don't see a PSA 9 mil can being less than like $200. I don't see a PSA 5.56 rifle can being less than $350 or $400, just from the time it would take, unless it is almost entirely stamped sheet metal with a tube. Then maybe you get under that price point. But the quality control that you have to have on suppressors is to an extent that you're not going to be successful and have a good reputation for them at too much lower of a price point. I just don't think you will.
Now, I will say that if HPA happens, I truly believe
Stuart says there were Rebel cans at $99. Hey man, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see the cost to manufacture them being that low. But
I think
if I'm wrong.
I think in the long term, we will see an explosion of different shops getting into the space. A lot of small shops and a lot of machine shops that don't traditionally make silencers are going to start running a third shift making them, because there's going to be so much profit margin in them in the short term. Like, it's going to be the Wild West.
I mean, I have all of the tooling necessary to do them. It would take me 2.5 hours to get everything set up to start running them off at work on a professional 4-axis. No, not even in Minecraft. Dude, I'm a machinist. Are you kidding me? I'm a tool maker. I am constructive intent. You can't put me in a machine shop and claim that I couldn't make a machine gun with what's in there, or I couldn't make a silencer. That's why I think constructive intent is the most bullshit thing I've ever heard for a legal justification. Like, I'm sorry. I have all of the equipment and skill set to make all of the parts needed for a machine gun or a suppressor or a bomb, except for the explosives.
Did I ever share with you the picture of the AR-15 loader that was made out of a 2x4?
I know. It's not even that difficult to do. You can do it with a handheld chisel.
Yeah, the fact that somebody made a lower out of a 2x4 is just, maybe it was a 2x6. I don't recall.
No,
it doesn't.
I think it was a 2x4 and then a piece of 2x screwed on the bottom for the pistol grip.
Yeah,
if memory serves.
But I mean, yeah, your point is well taken. You know, constructive intent is stupid, but
it's horseshit.
Yeah. You haven't broken the law, but we think you might.
We think you might. Yeah, well, I think I might go get some extra coffee later too, but that's not a problem either. And if we're going to worry about thinking someone's breaking the law, let's look at the politicians and their insider trading for 5 fucking minutes before you look at anybody in their back shed.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
I know, right?
Yeah, but like I said, that is my prediction on HPA and silencers, is that if HPA goes through, silencers are going to get really, really weird for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't already have one, you're not going to get one for a while. Cool. And that is going to be a good opportunity for you to go down to your local hardware store and make some really weird friends.
Napa has all of the freeze plugs and pipe that you will require.
And Ace Hardware is a wonderful source of thread adapters, just in case. But please, for the love of God, stay out of AutoZone and leave all of our truck oil filters alone. Pretty please, with sugar on top.
I do need an oil change soon.
Yeah. Maybe we should start a thing like extolling the virtues of like Nissan Altima oil filters, because those damn things shouldn't be on the road anyway.
They really shouldn't. They are just begging to be run into. Clearly, that has to be what it is. It's got to be the car's fault.
Okay, so Nissan Altima oil filters are cleared hot for use as homemade silencers if HPA goes through, but Toyota and Dodges are off limits.
Correct.
Can we agree on that?
Also, Fram 1250s, because that's what my tractor takes.
Good point.
I think it's 1250s.
All right. Well, next week, I don't know what we'll talk about. We'll figure something out. Maybe I'll actually post the stream before the day that we have to run it, if my life calms down a little bit. And frankly, I'll see if I can post this on YouTube without getting our entire channel nuked from orbit, and it just won't be a live stream.
If we do get nuked, find us on Rumble and Facebook.
We are on Rumble, we are on Facebook, and if, God forbid, we get nuked off of everything, I have a contingency plan, but this is a good reason why you should subscribe to, YouTube and Facebook and Rumble. You should follow our Facebook and our Instagram. You should probably check out the audio podcast and all your favorite podcast, formats, just because sometimes we discuss things that piss the powers that be off, and you might want to know where Plan B is going to be taking place. But Matter of fact, podcast going out the door. It's 8:49 p.m. and I have some things to attend to, like pissing off YouTube. Apparently,
Good.
good night, y'all.
Good night.